it's past 10, so we're good to go. Okay, everyone online, thank you. Everyone here, I appreciate it. 2 days in a row, right? So,
We're lucky.
we're lucky. All right. I appreciate that. It's been a while since the contract to close, but I've done it 1,000 times, so I'm sure. All right. So, remember, you need to be doing these things. Grow your business, lead generate for buyers and sellers, make seller listing presentations, get listings, make buyer presentations, get listings, preview real estate, negotiate. We're going to be here running your business, negotiate contracts, transaction management, close, vendor management, compliance, and risk management. Talk about all this stuff, which is super not fun. Well, they're fun. But most people, agents get scared about this stuff because they feel like I got to know this so I don't mess up. When really you need to worry about this. This will sort of take care of itself. You have enough help that it can help. But too many agents get stuck on that part. But we'll get going. So build seller timeline. So if you look at page 3 on your handout, we're going to build a buyer timeline. So okay. Let's talk about this. So the first one is, now this assumes you have a buyer, you've been shopping homes, showing them homes, and they like one, and you offer on that home, right? And now, and you've been through RPA class, so you know I write the offer, we go back and forth, maybe there's counter offers and stuff, and we get it in contract. We have what we call a fully executed contract. And does anyone have questions about that process, about negotiating and putting things in contract? No? Anyone online? Okay, good. So now we have a fully ratified contract. And when you have a ratified contract, that contract, once it is fully executed, the day the last people sign, either the buyer or sellers, depending on the back and forth, is day 0 of the contract. So that is day 0. That starts your time. So the day the contract is signed, it's not when you received it. So say you offered on Thursday, you offered on Wednesday, they responded on Friday saying we want you to up the price, or there's multiple offers, counter offer, up the price and change these terms, and you agree, and you send it back to them saying I agree, and then the seller say we accept your offer, but it's Saturday. Okay, when the seller signed and accept the offer. And but the agent was out for the weekend, right? And they didn't email it to you till Monday morning saying, congratulations, your offer accepted, but it was signed by the sellers on Saturday, right? There's a good contract. Your contract, day 0 of the contract would be Saturday because they signed it Saturday. Day 1 would have been Sunday. Day 2 would be Monday, okay? So just so you know, even if the agent delays in getting you the contract, right? The executed day is always day 0 of your timeline. That's the day it was executed by the last party that needs to sign. Make sense? Even if you didn't receive it, it's the day you have to go look, and when the day they signed, that's the executed day. If they were delayed, if the agent was late, and it was 3 days or 4 days after, often as an agent, if you see that gap, you should probably go and ask them for an addendum to move the start date of the contract to, before the work day, because they essentially were lazy to do the contract. Right? Now you're behind it, you're already behind on the contract. Well, there's more stuff we need to add in this time. So I'll add it artificially. So if you're drawing out your timeline, I recommend everyone, even online, get a piece of paper, draw out your timeline. And honestly, you should use a spreadsheet. Our TC people, they probably will email you the deadlines in a little email that says, here's the timelines on these. But as an agent, you should get to understand these timelines. As an agent, when I was operating a lot of property by myself, I would literally set the calendar days as an appointment in my calendar, just an all-day calendar, like contingency release, 123 Main Street, Contingency 345 Main Street, right? I would just level them so that, and I put reminders 3 days before, so I had reminder, oh, that's coming up, I need to work on that. Oh, that's coming up, I need to work on that. So you want to stay on top of your timelines. that things go wrong when you start missing deadlines. Okay, so let's talk about day zero. What's the first thing in the contract that comes up? Well, okay, number one, day zero, this is true, you need to work with your lender. The day you get the contract, if you're on the buy side, you need to make sure your lender has a copy of that contract. You need to send it to them because they don't know. And the loan is the number one thing that's going to either cause your delay or cancellation of your contract is the loan. That's the number one reason loans go sideways or transactions are sideways or transactions are delayed. So the first thing you need to do, and usually the smart listing agents will actually, when they send you the fully executed offer, because they'll have the pre-approval letter, they'll just usually email the lender for you in the same email. They'll just say, here it is. And they'll often email the escrow officer too, saying, here's escrow. So the escrow officer gets it, the lender gets it, you get it, right? But if they just send it to you and they're lazy, they don't know, you got to send it to your lender. The lenders, because they can't start the loan process till they get that contract. And that day triggers things. So, and they, trust me, just as we're building a timeline, the lender has a timeline on their own they have to meet, and those are government mandated timelines. So if you get it to them late, they're going to get delayed because they have to do certain wait periods, right? So, all right. So the first thing you do is make sure the lender has who the escrow company is. So most of the time, the listing agent is going to send you the executed contract. I'd say most of the time, the listing agent is also going to CC or put on that email the escrow company's email. They say, please open escrow, or here's the executed contract for the escrow. So you knew the escrow company. The lender needs the escrow company information because for them to disclose to start the loan process for the lender, they have to disclose an estimated settlement of what it's going to cost to do that loan to your buyer. That starts their process. They can't do that until they know what the escrow charges the fees. So they have to contact escrow to do that. So for number one on this, get a contract, make sure your lender gets it, make sure your lender has the escrow information. If you don't have escrow information, you need to list the agent who is the escrow, especially because most of the time in the Sacramento area, the seller is determining the escrow company, right? So you're often have to say, where's the escrow if they didn't get to you so that they can put it up. Clear as mud? Okay. What's the next deadline in the contract? You guys took RPA contract. What's the next? So we got execute contract, work with lender. We got to kind of put something in here. Here's something important. Anyone online? Something happens in 3 days after day zero. What happens in 3 days after day zero? On the buy side of the contract.
They need to turn in the deposit?
Thank you. They need to turn in their earnest money deposit. Remember that thing you felt the contract says we're going to put in $5,000 in escrow, right? That is due within 3 business days of the contract. Now, it's careful. You need to note this. Of all the deadlines in the contract, this is the only deadline that goes by business days. Well, that's not true. Close of escrow too. So there's only 2 deadlines that go by business days. Everything else, every other deadline just goes by days. So it is 3 business days. So for example, on our thing, they executed on Saturday, right? They email it to us Monday, so it's day 2 of the contract. But for the EMD, because it was executed on Saturday, day 1 is Monday, because it's 3 business days. So by contract on that contract, the buyer will have till Wednesday to get the EMD in, even though that'll be 3 business days, it'll be day 5 of the contract. Does that make sense?
You're saying EMD, what does that stand for?
Earnest money deposit.
Okay.
Your deposit. And your contract will say buyer's deposit. So the buyer's deposit, for those of you guys that know, is the buyer's motivation to put this house in contract. The bigger the deposit, the more the buyer is willing to risk. If they don't close, they could potentially lose that deposit to the seller, right? So the more they put in, that's sort of your buyer's earnest money. That means I want this house and I'm willing to put up money to get it, right? So and put it in escrow and hold it in escrow for both of us in case I don't close, right? So we already know we have execute contract. You got to get your stuff to the lender, right? right in there somewhere is 3 business days earnest money deposit. So you need to track that in your time, right? And then we're going to get to inspections, right? We got a deposit in. You should be ordering inspections right away because they're delayed, often not delayed, but you have to schedule them. So, and depending on your inspection contingency. So the next thing you're gonna have to worry about is inspections and your inspection contingency. Okay. So in your contract, you typically have 3 contingencies. What are those? You guys took RPA class? What is a contingency? What's a contingency? Anyone know? Anyone online?
The inspections.
Appraisal.
Appraisal?
Loan.
Loan, thank you. Okay. Okay. There are 3 contingencies standard in all the residential purchases. Right? What are contingencies? Contingencies are ways for the buyer to cancel the contract after escrow is open and get their deposit back. And the seller can't say anything. Right? So you have 3 contingencies in the contract. One is inspections. Inspection is a general term for a lot of different things. Inspections means physical inspections of the property, which is typically you would do a home inspection. Typically you do a pest inspection. Typically you do a roof inspection. Some properties you would want to do a sewer inspection if they're older, right? So if you find additional issues, you may do things like HVAC or mold testing or something like that. We have a chimney inspection. So a lot, but you're going to be standard is home, pest, and roof general. So you have your inspection. Not only that, but remember, they're going to give seller disclosures to you. What are their typical seller disclosures? Transfer disclosure statement, seller property questionnaire, and we'll learn that on the seller side. They have the sellers from the day of execution have 7 days typically in the contract to give you those documents. Those documents disclose anything that the seller, what we call this, they should be able, those documents, to disclose to you anything that affects the value and desirability of the property. So is anything broken? Was it broken and we fixed it? The bathroom leaked and there was a stain in the, we fixed the leak, but there's a stain in the ceiling, but we fixed the leak, right? So those all things need to be disclosed for the buyer, right? Like, I have a big backyard and it floods sometimes in the winter when it rains too much, right? So, those things need to be disclosed. Those happen in your disclosure statement, typically your TDS transfer disclosure statement and your seller property question. All those documents from the seller to the buyer. Remember what seller disclosure states. So the seller must give these disclosures to the buyer, along with other natural hazard disclosure statement, prelim, preliminary title report, some other documents, which if you go to the Friday class, you'll go through all those. Actually we'll go through. And they'll have seller disclosures that happen by 7 days. So you're going to get those. That also is encompassed in your inspection contingency. So we use this inspection contingency, and most agents think it's just the physical inspections, but it's more. It's looking at those docs and being okay with it. Right? Like maybe they said something that they didn't know about the house, that the seller says this happens, and the buyer's like, I don't want that, right? Someone died in the house in the last few years. I don't want the house, right? So they could disclose things that the seller may say, I don't really like that. We're gonna have to fix that. So there's also disclosures. There's also reports, like I told you, preliminary report, NHD report, are you in a flood zone, are you in a fire zone, earthquake zone? Prelim, is there something weird about the title of the house, right? So all those things have to be disclosed to the buyer. And then there's things that are not physical inspections. They could literally, the inspection contingency is wide ranging. So they could drive by the house at night and they see a black cat walking across the front of the house, like, we're out, we're not doing this, right? That's fine. So the inspection piece, the carte blanche. Do you like the house? You can come in the evening and they feel there's too many people parking on the street and it's going to be too crowded at night. Fine. They can come and there's a school down the street and it's busy at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because the school down the street people bring up. I don't want it. Fine. Does that make sense? So it doesn't have to necessarily be physical. It could be other things. They just have a feeling about the house. They don't like it. So that inspection, and it also covers things like home insurance. You won't have to less worry about home insurance. Usually the lenders will work with them on the home insurance to get the home insurance. Generally, your lenders will do that for you. But inspection contingencies, like sometimes if you're in the rural areas of California, you can't get fire insurance, or fire insurance is $6,000 a year, $10,000 a year, because they're worried about your house burning down. They don't want to pay you out, right? So if you're out there, sometimes your insurance thing is expensive. So that's also included. The lender will tell them, go price homeowner insurance. Here's the house, and the homeowner insurance will quote. If you need flood insurance, those are quotes also, right? So all those things are going to be encompassed within that inspection contingency. So you have those inspection contingencies. Typically, all your contingencies are 17 days. Now, if you're smart in writing offers this time, typically you're reducing that day to about, most are reducing to 10, maybe 7, because they want to give more certainty to the buyers earlier in the contract.
Is that business?
No, that is calendar days,
You said 7 days earlier for the TDS.
which is calendar days. The only two things that are have to happen on business days. No, the only thing that is counted by business days is the earnest money deposit. The only other thing that goes by business days is you have to close on a business day. So if it is that if you put a 30-day escrow and it closes on a Sunday, then you have to close on that. Sense? Everything else is by calendar days. So if we, for example, we talked about getting executed a contract on Saturday, day 0, day 7 would be Saturday, the next Saturday. So the seller has to get you the seller disclosures by Saturday, the next Saturday, right? So if you think that real estate is a 9-to-5 job, you're going to be sorely mistaken, right? So things happen on the weekend because buyers, that's when people have time. Okay, so we have our normally you have a 17-day inspection contingency, but typically that's written short. So if you're at 10 days or 7 days, you need to adjust your timeline, right? To make that reflective. If you're at 10 days, you need to hustle. That means right at the beginning, you need to order inspections, because often the inspectors are 5 days out, 7 days out from doing inspections. So you're gonna have to like hustle. Any questions on that? Remember, you have a second contingency. And we talked about that, which I think Riley talked about, which is your appraisal contingency. What's the appraisal contingency? What's an appraisal? You guys learned this in school.
How much the property is? Or what you see that you think it is?
Yeah, it's an opinion by a licensed professional on the value of the home. And the lenders use this value as a way to estimate how much they want to do the loan. So for example, if you offered 500 and they approved it for 500, everything's good, the loan works. Say the buyer's putting 20% down. If they only did it for 490, what happens? The lender's going to go to them and say, we're not going to give you up to 500, we're only going to give you up to 490. So what happens?
The buyer can choose if they want to still go forward with it, right?
Yeah, the buyer can say, yeah, I'll bring 10,000 more cash on top of my 20% down. So the lender's going to be like, we're going to reset your loan to 490, 20% down. And then buyer, you have to bring extra 10 cash to make it work. Or you can negotiate with the seller. The seller's like, well, we'll work with you, we'll do 5.5. We'll go down to 495, you bring 5 extra. Or the buyer can say, I don't want this seller, you want to come down? Come down to 490. Buyer can say, come down to 490. Seller says, hell no, I ain't doing that. Well, either bring cash or I'll walk and I'll give it to the buyer. If they say that, they say I walk, you can cancel on your appraisal. So if the value of the appraisal comes in less than the purchase price, that contingency is a way for the buyer to cancel and get the bill. Typically, that is 17 days on your timeline, right? Same as. Don't shorten the appraisal contingency unless you talk to your lender. The lender orders the appraisals, and appraisers are backed up right now because they're super busy. So we've had a lender that can't get out there for 21 days, right? And so your lender has to incentivize them and rush appraisals and stuff like that, pay them more money to get them out there quicker. So just don't just like, I want to make my offer sexy, so I'm going to shorten all my deadlines. If your lender can't meet that deadline. Okay. Here, are we clear on appraisal? Okay, the third contingency is loan contingency. That is typically 17 days. Also, what's the loan contingency?
They don't qualify.
Correct. If in the end, they don't get approved for the loan, they can cancel the deal, but they have to not get approved for the loan. That is your loan. Do not shorten your loan contingency unless you talk to the lender. The lender will not have time to get approval. So if they say I can get something back in approval by, and there's different stages of that, so I don't want to go into that detail. You'll have a lender come in and talk about those stages. But just know there is a process. So when you submit the file for underwriter review, the loan officer takes the file and submits it to the underwriter review. The underwriter will typically come back and give them what we call approval with conditions. Well, they can reject it too. They can just say no. If they say no, you can cancel loans. They can approve with conditions, and the conditions may be: we need an appraisal. Buyer, I need an extra pay stub. I need an extra bank statement, something like that, right? Conditions on. And then they go, then you have to submit all the conditions back, and then the underwriter reviews the conditions and say that you submitted all the conditions, all the conditions. They come back and give you a full approval. At full approval, then they can go to start to close the loan, right? But that process, you want to kind of release your loan contingency after you got full approval. Full approval often require the appraisal to be done and completed in terms of the lender, right? So all that's going to be required.
And they can get their earnest money deposit back, right? If
Yes,
the loan
if you cancel on any of those contingencies, you can get your deposit back. The inspection contingency, though, is the only contingency where you sort of have carte blanche. We want to cancel. If your appraisal, you only can enact the appraisal contingency if you want to cancel if the appraisal is less than the purchase price. You can only use the loan contingency to cancel, get the deposit back if the loan is denied, but it can't be denied because you spent too much money. So if the buyers went out and bought a boat and now they don't qualify because they lost the cash they were down payment, that doesn't qualify. It's only if they don't qualify based on their financial, their credit, their income, things like that. If they have to cancel because they spent their money, then they're out. They may lose the deposit. Questions? All right. One thing about contingencies that you need to know. In our contract, the contingencies are not, they're active contingencies, meaning the buyer must release the contingency in writing for it to go away. So what happens if you have a 17-day loan contingency, you don't have loan approval yet, and now I'm going past 17, say it's day 18 of the contract. What happens? No, it's active. The buyer still has a contingency. If they haven't released it in writing, they still have that day 18. They still have it. They have to release it in writing. So on the sell side, we'll note that there's going to be a change. So the seller side, on the listing side, you want to make sure the buyer's following deadlines. Because if you just let it walk and they don't release contingencies, you screwed your seller. We have that situation at work. Seller wants deposit, but we had inspection contingency because the seller wasn't harsh on. The listing agent wasn't harsh on giving us deadlines. We never released the inspection contingency. It was day 27, and we canceled. It was supposed to be 7 days, and it was day 27, and they never asked us for it, so we never gave it to them. We still had inspection contingency, cancel on inspection, day 27. Seller already moved out of the house. Right, I said we want our deposit back. So I was like, no, we got inspection contingency. Makes sense? So remember, it's active release. Active. Now be careful if you're offering on bank-owned homes or like Zillow homes or something like that. They have an addendum that goes to the contract, or they may even have their own contract. A lot of times those people will make them, instead of active contingency releases, they'll make them passive. What passive means, 17 days, it's done. it automatically releases without it. You have buyer have to do it in writing, it just goes. Makes sense? Okay, we good on those? We got our contract day 0. We got our seller disclosures 7 days, or earnest money deposit 3 days, 3 business days. We got our seller disclosures 7 days. We got our inspection, appraisal, and loan contingency 17 days. All right, we all good?
Can you elaborate with like if you did it on Zillow after 17 days automatically?
So there's 2 types of contingencies in contracts. There's passive and active. Active means the person who has a contingency has to, in writing, literally have a contingency form. It's called the contingency release form. Literally, buyer says, I'm releasing inspection fee. I did the inspections, looked at your docs, I drove by the house a few times, I like it, we're good to go on condition. Sign off, boom, it's gone. On an REO bank owned contract, they're going to change the contract, says passive. Day 17 comes along, I'm not done with my inspections. We're still looking at the docs. We're still thinking about it. Day 18, you're out, buyer. Sorry, done. Your inspection is done. What?
Do you lose your?
Well, the contract says if you release your contingencies and don't close, the deposit is up for grabs. So I want to impress upon you on this timeline how, okay, let me pull it back. You have a fiduciary, you learned this in school, right? You have a fiduciary duty to your clients. Do you realize this same fiduciary duty is the same thing as doctor to patient, lawyer to client? You have to look out for the financial well-being of your clients. If you are sloppy with your contingencies and you lose deposits, you have failed at your fiduciary contingency as a buyer. Makes sense? So you need to treat that important. Those contingencies are vitally important to you protecting your buyer's financial interests. All right. So do not treat them lightly. Not treat them lightly. That's why we're told all the time, because they're very important. It needs remember, you're at the top of the heap. You're the realtor at the top. Escrow, title, lender, inspectors are all on this pyramid. You're at the top. Why you get paid the most of anybody in this whole thing is because you run the show. You make sure the lender's on task to meet the deadlines. You make sure the inspectors are going to get out there on time. You're making sure you're releasing the contingencies on time and that you have everything squared away so you can release contingencies on time, right? That your buyer is okay to release those contingencies. You need to set those things up, right? That's why you're in charge. That's why we teach you a timeline, because you are there as a realtor to manage the whole transaction. And there are a bunch of parts that are moving and a bunch of people that you have to interact to move those things. You need to be on top of that. Make sense? All right, so I want to stress that about contingencies, because the seller in the RPA doesn't have a right to cancel the contract unilaterally. That means the seller can't just say, oh, I changed my mind, I don't want to sell my home anymore. They can't do that in the contract. The only time they have the right to do that, where they can go, buyer, I don't care, I'm canceling, is if you breach contract. The buyer breaches contract. So let's talk about that. Say we have the 17-day contingencies. We talk about going day 18, day 19. This listing is like, hey, where's my inspection contingencies, right? Like, you're supposed to release these contingencies. Where's my contingency release? And you're like, oh man, but you were lazy, or you went on vacation and didn't care about it, and you went through inspections, and the HVAC needs inspection because the home inspector's like, there's something wrong there, you should bring your HVAC out, right? But you were lazy, didn't get out there. He can't get out there until day 18. You're like, well, I got to do my HVAC inspection. They're like, I don't care. You had 17 days to take care of it. You should take care of it, right? They issue a notice to perform. They say you got 2 days to release contingencies. Now you have to go to your buyer and say, like, either release a contingency and hope the HVAC's okay, or I can try to ask for an extension, but they don't have to agree. They may say no, or we got to just cancel because we don't know what's up with each other. But that's my fault. Sorry, because I'm lazy.
I wouldn't want to work with them.
Yeah, if you're a buyer, you'd be like,
Okay.
what the hell? It's hella hard to get in contract in this market, right? We want 20 offers to get in contract. You were lazy on the damn HVAC inspection, so now I have to make a choice of either taking it as is or trying to get an extension to ask a favor from the seller because you were dumb, right? And lazy. Like, so that's how you lose clients. And when we talk about, on this whole thing, we talked about your value propositions. You are a business. How you interact and how you manage this is your customer service. That literally is your customer service, right? Literally, like if I get something disclosed on day 7, usually I try to do them all the inspections. So we do inspections. I'm usually there to open up the inspections an hour early. Inspectors go there. I tell my buyers come an hour later because inspectors need time to inspect. But I bring all this other disclosures. I go, I know you got these DocuSign, but I just want to make sure you don't have any questions about it. If you have any questions about these disclosures, we can go over. Right? In fact, I did an agent visual inspection on the property. I want to show you what I saw on the property. Right? They're not usually, these are the defects I saw. I just want to make sure you're okay. Right? And then right out there, I said, hey, look, we talked to the inspector. We go over my agent visual inspection. We went over the seller, what the seller told us. Is there a request for repair you want to do? And think about it, if I have a 17-day deadline and I need to negotiate a request for repair, I need to have that repair request to the listing agent prior to the 17 days. Because in the contract, the seller doesn't have to respond to the request for repair. They can say, pound sand. So you can say, I'm scrambling, I give my request for repair on day 17, because I've been scrambling, I get my request for day 17, they issue notice of form, say, release a contingency, and say, I want a response, and they say, we don't have to, you gave it late. That was done for these contingencies. Now, they want to close too, don't get me wrong, so they may be amenable to responding, but they don't have to respond. But the last thing you want to do is start negotiations late in the process, right? When you could have just done your due diligence and have it to them day 10, right? And then you have a real discussion, right? Then you're not wasting the buyer's time or the seller's time, right? Right, making myself clear. That is your customer service. You need to know the timeline. You need to know what you need to get done during that timeline. You need to make sure the buyer's getting their stuff to the lender. You need to make sure that you're getting the inspections order done, that they're reviewing the inspections, that you're reviewing the inspections with them and making sure there's any things they're really concerned about, that you're reviewing the seller's disclosures, that they're not concerned about any of those or the other reports. And remember, they're buyers, they might know, they're going to see NHD reports and like, what the hell is that? Right? You're like, this is about. And often I go back in the NHD report, they'll have the property taxes. I go, these are the property taxes. These are the Melrose, right? These are the school bonds you have to pay. Your tax bill is going to be like this, right? Right? So they need to know that stuff because that's important. Right? So we got our 17 days. Now, after the 17 days on the buy side, what happens? We released all our contingencies, right? We're good to go. We did inspections. Maybe we did request repair. We got some repairs approved, the pest repairs done, closed. The seller's doing pest repairs. We did our appraisal. Appraisal came in normal. We're good to go. We got our loan approved. Loan's good to go. They're closing. So what happens? Well, there's
We
something
have to
that
make
happens
sure that
before.
they have to have their insurance.
Well, they got for the loan, yeah, for the loan to get fully approved, they're gonna have to have the insurance in place. If we're gonna have a home warranty on the house, which you negotiate the front end, don't worry, we'll just usually escrow will order that on the front end, but it'll be put in by the end. So usually you don't have to deal with home warranty, but sometimes you do. Usually escrow will go on the contract, look who the home warranty is, and order a home. But you need to make sure it happens. But in the contract, there's a thing called the final walkthrough. It happens, you have a right to re-access the property for inspections 5 days prior to close of escrow. 5 days prior. We call that the final walkthrough. Now, agents get lazy. The buyers can waive that, but they want to do a final walkthrough, and you want to do a final walkthrough for 2 reasons. 2 reasons. Okay. One is, and often you want to do it before they sign docs to close the house. Remember, by this time you have no contingencies left. There's no way for the buyer to stop the contract, stop it from closing without taking financial repercussions like losing, right? So prior to closing, but prior to them signing and saying, yes, we want to buy this house, here's the loan docs and we're going to close on this home, you need to take them on a final walk. 2 things on those levels. One is you want to make sure the condition of the home is the same at the time of purchase. You got an escrow. Oftentimes sellers will start at this point being moved out of the home right? The problem with that is, maybe they moved out, but they left holes in the wall. And those holes weren't there before, and now your buyer's like, what the heck, right? So oftentimes it's a way to catch things happen, especially if the seller's moved out. Trust me, the house always looks better after the seller moves out. It always looks worse, right? Maybe they didn't clean it. I've had many times you walk through and they moved out, but there's trash everywhere. Right? These are times you need to catch things. Two, the second reason you do a final walkthrough is if you requested repairs. If you requested repairs and the seller agreed to do those repairs, they would do them after you release contingency. So the process is you request repairs. If they agree to do repairs, the buyer then releases their inspection contingency. At that time, saying, seller, you agreed. The seller, after that period to close, is required then to do those repairs. Say they did the pest repairs. They'll usually provide you a pest clearance report. Say, okay, I got pest clearance. But even if I have pest clearance before I do the final walkthrough, I want to kind of, as an agent, I want to make sure you'll see the new wood in there and you'll see it painted. You see where it was dry rotted before. So you want to look and make sure it was actually done. We've had, so you're there to make sure. We've had people check things on home inspection. And they said, we want you to fix this and this and this on the home inspection. They agreed. Seller says, I'm a handy guy. I'm going to fix it myself. While the buyer, I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about like, well, are they just going to, do some little hoopty fix, right? So I can go in and look at those things, like did they fix the tile? Did they fix, whatever you asked for? Did they fix it? Did they caulk that, right? So you need to look at those, like literally, like we have requested these items. Okay, go into the bathroom. Look, is it there? Is it done? Does it look janky? Is it okay? Right? Like this sort of thing. Just we had a bunch of people who agents get lazy because they don't want to go out there and do a final walkthrough, so they ask their buyers to waive it. They get in there and all the repairs are janky, and now you've closed. You waived your inspection. Buyers are out.
So if like in the home inspection, you had a HVAC, licensed professional came out there, there's something wrong with it, and the seller's like, oh, I can take care of it.
Well, so you can say, here's our inspection, but sellers pay for the repair, right? The sellers would then pay for the repair. Now normally, like an HVAC, they're going to have a licensed person, right? And they would provide you, right? So here you go. But other repairs can be like less. They're more handyman, like patch that hole. Well, the seller could patch the hole, even at Home Depot, little thing, but it may look janky, horrible, right? Does it make sense? So yeah, so you got to be careful about how these repairs happen. I can tell you a lot of things happen after close, but once your buyer closes, it's really hard to get things done. It's better to do it right before close and say, no, escrow, we're not signing, we're not closing. We have these holes in the walls. Seller, what are we going to do about this? And they're like, no, you need to close. No, you need to tell us how you're fixing these holes. These holes weren't there, right? So your only leverage at this point is holding up closing because of issues that where the condition of the property wasn't the same, or the repairs were not done or completed in the poor manner, right? That's what the final one. I'll just give you a story. We had this house listing. This was a HUD home up in Placerville, and we were here, and the buyer's agent was here in Sacramento as well. The sellers were moving out of Sacramento and moving up to Placerville. We're about to close, and I call the the buyer's agent. And I say, hey, are you doing your final walkthrough? We're going to close tomorrow, and I haven't seen you didn't access the property yet. Because we're asking them for the we're asking them. There's a form you fill out called the verification of property condition, the VP, which you fill out after final walkthrough, and the buyers say, oh, there's nothing wrong. Good, right? They issued a VP to us and said, oh, and they marked buyer waives inspection. And I was like, I called her and I said, hey, this is a HUD home. Once we close, you're done. They will not come back and fix anything. You need to take your buyers up there. I'm just warning you. You need to take your buyers up there. They're not going to do anything after close. She's like, well, that's a long drive. That's a long drive. I don't want to go up there. I was like, you need to go up there and get your buyers up there. Lo and behold, what'd she do? She didn't go. She gets up there day after close. Okay, you gotta go. Yeah. Vandals came in. They ripped out all the pipes in the walls. Literally ripped them out of the walls, all the copper pipes.
Oh,
all the copper piping, ripped it out, flooded the house. Copper house, all the walls are jacked, floors jacked, everything's jacked. She calls me and says, ah! I said, you should have done your white walkthrough, because she said it's been there for a while because it's been sitting there like a few days. And I was like, I told you to do the final walk. You called me before, we could have held up closed. HUD would have come in and done all the repairs. Now, she's like, what do? I says, call your buyer's insurance. Now you're gonna pay the deductible and insure that and pay that. And that sucks because you didn't do a final walk. And what do you think the buyers are gonna do? They're gonna be like, agent, I have a $10,000 deductible on my homeowner's insurance. You messed this up. You should have told me, you had me sign a waiver when we should have went up there.
Can't they sue the agent
They
for?
do the agent. Say, you harmed me, I'll take the small thing, give you more money. So, do your final walkthrough.
Be diligent.
Be diligent, yeah. This is your customer service. If you're like, oh, it's Placerville, I don't want to drive up there, that's a lot. You made a choice about your customer service to your clients, and you exposed them to potential liability and financial liability because of your choice.
It also shows your drive for your own business.
Yeah, that means that is you're making a choice on how you want to show up for your customer service and your brand for your business. And I can tell you, I've been in business 14 years. The only thing that you can really control, that you can really control in your business, is your reputation. That's it. And your reputation in the end will drive your business. So, all right. So we got our buyers. We're at 5 days to close, right? And then right before close, they're going to sign. Buyers are going to sign. Well, actually, the lender is going to send what we call a CD, a closing disclosure, which is a final docs, the final numbers. Once they sign that, they have 3 days. And then they sign. They sign all the loan docs. They sign the escrow or with a notary. And then once they sign, it's released to the loan funds, and then we're released to record. It usually takes a day or two after they sign. Get that done. So you don't want them signing on the last day. You want them signing a few days before so that we can actually close on time, right? Clear as mud? Everyone online good?
Yep.
Yep. Any questions about the buyer timeline? Everyone got it written out on their piece of paper? All right. We're gonna go to the seller timeline now. The sell time is a little easier. You just gotta make sure the buyer does their stuff. So. All right, so we got accepted offer. We talked about that, right? We accept the offer. That's day 0, right? Day 0. What's the next timeline we gotta meet? Remember the 3 business days earnest money deposit. We gotta make sure the buyer puts the earnest money deposit into escrow within 3 days. Right? And if they don't, you got to be issuing notice to performs, like either put it in there or cancel, right? Then what happens at 7 days? We talked about it on the buyer side. What happens at 7 days for the seller side?
TDS, seller question.
Yeah, you got to put the seller, you got to call those seller disclosures. The seller disclosures by day 7 must go to the buyer side. Understand? So if you're a really good listing agent, you should already have all those disclosures signed already. And so on day 0, you just give it to them. All right. You have 7 days, but the good listing agents give it on day 0 because they have it already. Then what are the next deadlines you need to monitor?
Good question. There.
Yeah, so you got to monitor the inspections, right? You got to make sure they have access. That they have access at a particular time. Your seller should not be at the property when they're doing these things. So usually you're arranging those times. Make sure that the house is available for inspection. So you're working with the buyer to make sure inspections happen. You're also watching the contingency deadlines. As a listing agent, your #1 thing to protect the fiduciary duty of your seller is to watch the contingency deadlines, right? So we have contingency. The appraisal happened because as a listing agent, you control the access to the house. The lender's appraiser will often call you for access, meaning you need to be responsive. When you get a voicemail or an email from the appraiser saying, how do I access the property? When can I go over there? You need to respond. You need to give the appraiser access to the property. If in this market you got 15 offers and you were 50,000 over and you're concerned about the appraisal being low, you might want to be there at the appraisal to show him how to try and justify the property price. Like, look at these features, look at this, you know, here's some comps I saw, what we thought, why we think it's well good, right? You need to sort of help your client. They don't have this in here, but you also have a loan contingency, which happens 7 days. You need to make sure the lender's on top of it. Right now in the contract, the listing agent is able to talk to the lender. Even prior to getting an offer, you should be regularly contacting the lender to make sure that they're on pace to close the loan on time. So throughout this process, your goal is to, as you can see, the only real activity is giving them the seller disclosures. Every other activity is verifying that the buyer is doing that action and releasing contingency at one time. Makes sense? And that the lender is actually working to get this closed. If there's a request for repair negotiated right here, then after that, and so after the, usually when you close it, if you agree to do repairs, if the seller agrees to do repairs, at that point, the buyer releases their inspection contingency. And the seller has the rest of the time till close to get those repairs done. You will often need to assist your seller on these repairs. Oh yeah, we agreed to the pest repairs. Great. I'll just have the pest. I'll tell the pest to come out to do it. Is that okay? It's going to cost $1,500. Yeah, that's okay. Or we need to get this HVAC done. According to, do you want to use their vendor? Their vendor said it's going to be $675 to fix the HVAC. Or do you want me to get another bid? You need to work that out. You need to get those repairs done and work with the seller. Makes sense. Some sellers are like, I'm a contractor, I'll take care of it. Some are like, I don't even know who to call. You need to make sure those things happen, right? So you're doing repairs all the way up till
5 days.
5 days before the final walkthrough. Okay, so things they need to know on final walkthrough. If on the buy side, your final walkthrough and it's 5 days before close and they're supposed to move out by close and nothing's packed, you should be very concerned that the buyer is physically not, the seller is physically not going to be out of the property in time. So if you walk to your final walkthrough and there's no one there and there's everything's still packed, there's no boxes or anything, you need to be calling this. It's like, what the heck? We're closing in 4 days and the buyer hasn't even packed. The seller hasn't even packed. Or what's happening? Do we need to delay? Like, you need to talk to your seller.
How many days do they have in order to be out?
They have to be out at close. At close. I would recommend doing your final walkthrough. I try to always do my final walkthrough on the buy side after they've moved out, literally when it's big, because you'll see more, right? So oftentimes I'm not doing it day 5. Oftentimes I'm doing it day 2 or 1 because I want the seller out so I can see the house, right? So
When people have their inspections done, is it typical that there's a lot of stuff still in the home and there's residents living there? Like
yeah, oftentimes I see sellers pushing it pretty close. Sometimes if there's an issue, they need to use the money to buy it, they'll have a rent back. So there's 2 levels. One is you can do a final walkthrough here, but they're still going to stay in possession of the house past that. So it won't be packed. It won't be packed, they'll just be living there. So you got a 30-day rent back. At that point, after close, 30 days later, after they moved out, you need to do a walkthrough, right? And often when you're negotiating the net rent back, you're putting a deposit in there. I want a $2,500 deposit. So after you do that, you do your inspection, say, oh, there's a couple holes in the wall, it's going to cost us $500 to fix that. Sellers, we're only going to give you $2,000 back of your deposit, we're taking $500. So makes sense. So but if you have repairs and your seller's going to move out by close, you got to make sure those repairs are done before the final walkthrough, right? If you get proof of repairs, you have a licensed person do it. You need to provide them receipts to show that it is done. Right, so that is your job to disclose that. Oh, one other thing I forgot to tell you, on the buy side, those seller disclosures that we send at 7 days, they're required to be signed and returned to our side, the listing side, by the inspection contingency. So the inspection is 17 days. I provide them 7. especially these 17 deadlines. Not only must I either release, especially get agreement to request repairs and consistency, and I have to provide them the seller signed disclosure by the buyer signed off. I gotta provide those back. So one of the deadlines you need to think about is, do I got my seller disclosures back, right? I gave it to them, buyer sign them, get it back to me. So, questions? We've got to close, and then literally close, the seller goes and signs. And that's quick.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, like, when you're doing your seller presentation, your seller's timeline's like 60 days, so they can leave based on their job or whatever. When would you start their process as far as being on it?
No, when would I start now? 60 days is not. It goes like that. So you're in the market for 2 weeks. Now I got 45 days. Say they want a 30-day close, but the lender's delayed, the appraisal's delayed. Now we have to extend 2 weeks. Now I need an extra week. Now you're screwed, right? So like,
60 days of time then?
yeah, I'm like, because we can always say, I can always tell them we can't close till here, or we need to rent back to here.
Okay.
I'll say, let's close it, because oftentimes if I wanted to move there, I want to buy a house there, I gotta have this money. I gotta get my equity out, and buy another home, right? Well, they need that money physically. That means we have to close before they can buy the next house. So I have to close, rent back 30 days, so they can go buy that other house, right? So almost the time I was like, when do you want to move? Do you need the money in this house to buy the next house? Like, those are the questions you need to be asking at the listing appointment. Like, those are important, very important questions, right? So I'm saying, if you could move, when would you ideally move? Right? Do you need the money in this house to move there? Right? Do you mind renting back? This is what a rent back is like, right? All right, we did our seller timeline. Any questions on the seller timeline? Okay. There should be an activity. So think about your customer service. The number one thing that buyers and sellers complain about their agents and their customer service is lack of communication. Lack of communication. So we just built a timeline for you. Make sense? What communication points would you want to put in to your timeline? So I'd recommend getting systemized about when you talk to your clients. So I tell my sellers, look, I'm going to call you once a week on Friday.
I was just about to say that.
And even if nothing happens, I'm going to call you on Friday. Actually, I can call on Thursdays now. Thursdays, because I want to prep it. It's not. I said, we'll call you, even when we're asking, I'll call you Friday, unless something happens. If something happens, I will call you soon. We get an offer, or the buyer's release contingencies, or we got a request for repair, right? But you want to systemize your communication. So when we talk about this, think about your communication points in your timelines. So think about on the buy side what they're going to want to know. So we get a contract. Of course, you're going to call and say, congratulations, we got a contract. By the way, the lender's going to be asking you for documents if they haven't already, right? By the way, you're going to have to turn in your deposit. You're going to have to get a $3,000 check to escrow. I'm going to email you, or I'm going to text you the address for where you can send that check or deliver that check to, right? You need to get those communications down there. Okay, the first thing we need to do is I recommend we do an inspection, a roof and a home inspection. Are you okay with that? The home inspection will cost $495. You know, the roof inspection is going to be $100, and pest inspection is going to be $125. Are you okay with that? Yeah, I'm okay with that. Great. What days can you come over to do a home inspection? And most times it's going to be a weekday. So is there a day you can get off work early that you can come and do these within the next 10 days, right? You know, you need to work on these things, communication. So think about all your things start with communication. You should bring your buyers to the inspections, not at the beginning, because they'll be standing around for an hour. So tell your home inspector, hey, when's a good time I can bring the buyers by so that you can talk to them about what they discovered. So they don't ask questions of me, they ask questions of the inspector. So I don't have to answer questions that I don't know. Right? So I bring them in. And they'll feel better because they'll like, what's that? How do I do that? And they'll say, that's that. Don't worry, it's easy fix. Go to Home Depot, buy this, $40, you're done. Right? So they can have those conversations, right? Where you don't have to have those conversations. And it's good for you to see those. You need to learn those conversations. Like you need to learn over time what's a big deal and what's not a big deal, right? On a house, right? So
I do have a quick question. With the inspections, the seller is responsible for, no, I'm sorry, the buyer is responsible for paying the fees for the inspection, correct?
correct. In
Okay.
our area, that is a tradition. In our area, the buyer pays the inspection. I will say it is changing a little bit. The Bay Area operates differently. The seller usually does inspections before they even list and puts it out there to the buyer. Say you can use ours or get your own, but you always have the right to get your own. Even if the seller gives you one, you can get your own.
Does that speed up the closing process?
It makes it makes, think about it. Think about this. Buyer puts their deposit in. Only after they're in contract, they put the deposit in, they get all the information about the house, condition, what the seller knows about the house, then they get it. And then they have to decide whether they want to move forward. But if I gave that all information prior to even offering, saying, here's the house, if you want to offer, and here's all the disclosures, look at them and sign everything and review everything with your buyer before you offer. Then, do you think it's a more solid escrow? Yeah, because they already know everything about the house. The only thing that could possibly discover is if they do more inspections or do it. But they know most of the conditions of the house and say, I'm okay with this, I'm okay with this, and I'm writing this offer because of this condition. Right? And then you write an offer based on that. So that's how the Bay Area does it. We don't do it that way. Most of the places don't do it that way, but it's probably a safer practice, but it does put more cost onus on the seller. The seller then is paying for a home inspection, pest inspection. Right? So in our area, I say, sellers, don't get an inspection unless you're willing to pay for the repairs. Or sometimes I'll say a house and I walk around and go, there's dry rot. You're gonna have dry rot, seller, this is gonna become an issue for just about anybody. So I recommend get a pest repair, but we're gonna have to get a pest repair and repair it because it's gonna hinder the loan getting closed. So sometimes I'm advocating because I see issues. Any questions? So think about your communication points. You should have regular based communication and you should have communication based on things that happen in the contract, based on your timeline. That is one big aspect of your customer service. Can't stress that enough. That is a big aspect of your customer service. Is if you're diligent with your communication, if you keep them informed, they will be more calm through the transaction. They will trust you and feel like you're on top of it. You'll earn what I call chips. You'll earn respect and trust. So when you have to go to them and say, the appraisal came in low, I know you have it, but I need you to put $10,000 more in to make this deal happen. Trust me, you'll love this house, it's gonna work. When you say trust me, what you did the 17 days before is whether they're actually gonna trust you. Does it make sense? So earn the trust. You earn it not only during showings and other stuff and contract negotiation, but you earn it as you show good customer service and professionalism through your thing. So I know it sounds stupid, but that is your customer service. Literally, that's your customer service. When you say, I want 5-star customer service for my clients, a big part of that is communication. All right, we got this. Everyone feel comfortable about this, but you should have your timeline. And just theoretically, you should think about every time this happens, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to send to my clients. This is what I'm going to talk to them on. And I'm going to talk to them regularly, no matter what, at these times every week, right? On Tuesdays, I'm going to call my buyers, and on Thursdays, I'm going to call my sellers, right? Whatever it is. All right, cool. Okay, we documented our timeline. Okay, best practice or risk avoidance. And this is page 5 of your handout. So we're on page 5. Where is the deal at risk of falling apart on the timeline? What is the biggest risk of falling apart?
Not getting approved.
Yeah, it's not good. Hello? Yeah, Bernice?
Yeah, I said the loan.
Yeah, the loan. The loan is probably the biggest thing. Loan and appraisal are the biggest things that end up having risk of your deal falling apart. Because we're offering so high in multiple offers, appraisal comes in because often appraisal comes in low. And unless your buyer already has cash to bridge the gap, sometimes they're not even winning. Most time we're offering and we'll say, hey, we know we're coming in high and we'll even pay 20,000 above if the appraisal comes in low. So if the appraisal comes in low, we say, we already tell the seller, we'll bring more cash if it comes in low, don't worry, right? To get our offer accepted. So yeah, loan is the biggest thing that blows up contracts. Think about this. We talked about our timeline. The same timeline happens with the loan officer. The loan officer's lazy and doesn't do their job. They can blow it up too. They can be late.
You need to be in contact with your loan officer.
Your loan officer is your number. Now I think in previous ones we talked about your allied partners in business. Your lender is your most important partner because they are probably 75% of the reason why deals fall apart. Because the loan isn't approved, the appraisal is low, they're too slow, they blow something up. They pre-approved someone that shouldn't have been pre-approved. They weren't diligent on the front end. They forgot, they didn't realize they had an IRS lien, which they should have looked at, right? You know. So they issued a pre-approval letter without actually looking at it, right? So those are the biggest risk applying. What else is risk applying? You know, in the timeline. Yeah, so inspections. Right? What if you come in and there's $12,000 in pest repairs? Right? You think that's gonna scare a buyer? Well, it says there's termites all over the place. You think that's gonna scare a buyer?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So inspections are often where it falls apart, especially if they're large. So the better agents know how to, I could say, when you get savvy, the better agents, when I'm showing a property, the buyer's looking at, oh, look at those windows, look at that kitchen. I'm looking like, what can blow up this house? Right? Will this house appraise? Do I see any dry rot? Do I see issues that I know that would likely kill the deal? Then I can work those in on the front end. So when I call this in, I'm like, hey man, look, I saw there's a lot of dry rot on the house. Is your seller amenable to a pest inspection? Now we won't put in the contract, but I just want to know if we can deal with the pest bill. Is that an issue? And she's like, well, yeah, I talked to my seller about that. We just want to deal with it when we have the pest inspection. Okay, at least I know they're open to dealing with it, right? So those things I want to anticipate on those things. So inspections, loan are your biggest thing that will fall apart. What's the best practice to keep the deal alive?
Staying in communication.
Communication is the number one thing. Most of the time I have broker issues and agents are yelling at each other and I got to intervene. It's because one or both parties didn't, meaning one ghosted the other one and they don't know right now, they're pissed. Right? And now you made the listing agent pissed and you got to go to them with a request for repair. Think about it. You ghosted them. They don't know where they are. They have to call me. You finally talk to them and say, oh, here's a request for repair for $10,000, $12,000. What is the likelihood that the listing agent is going to present that well to the seller when you just ghosted them for 17 days, right? So literally your communication to customer service will often, because we're all human beings, will often dictate how successful your negotiations are. If you're on top of a professional, the listing agent is probably going to work with you more, right? So those things is the best practices to keep deals alive. Communicate. Yeah. What tasks have deadlines and those that, and what are those deadlines? So we know the tasks that have deadlines, right? On the buy side, you have a lot. On the sell side, you're really monitoring to make sure they happen. The only real tasks are seller disclosures and doing any repairs that the seller has agreed to, right? On the buy side, you're responsible for both EMD, responsible for the transactions, monitoring contingencies, all those things.
When the contracts, or I'm sorry, when the down payment is due it's 3 business days after the.
It's not the down payment, it's the earnest money deposit.
Earnest money deposit, okay, sorry, I wrote that down. That's the earnest money.
3 business days.
3 business days, okay.
How can you manage other parties involved in the deal? So we talked about the lender, right? You have to manage the inspectors. Sometimes you made a repair. I had a agent. They did a lot of home inspections. They asked for a lot of home inspection repairs. It was a raised house. Some of the inspection requests were underneath the house. They're going for the final walkthrough. They say, "What do I need to do? What do I do, John? I'm not calling underneath the house, right?" I say, "No, you can that you can call your inspector, you can pay them $150, your buyer will have to pay, or you can pay, you gotta get it back out there. And you can say, we've asked for these items, can you verify the items? Now, you don't have to verify it, you have another inspector, yeah, that's good, that's good, that's good, it is repair, but it's not the code. They didn't do that repair, right? Then you have to say, like, hey, look, seller didn't do it, right? So you need to manage the other party. Remember, as a real estate agent, the reason you're getting 2.5% to 3%, something more, is because you manage all the parties. You manage escrow. You need to be talking to escrow, make sure they're doing it on time. You got to be managing the lender, the inspectors, sometimes the contractors, right? So you got to be managing all of these moving parts, and there's a lot more than that. So you got to make sure you deal with those and maintain those people. One thing I want to know is, why is your relationship with your co-broker important? Where could you be at risk if you don't work with your co-broker? We talked about that, right? This is a small world. There's a lot of agents, but I can tell you the agents that do a lot of business, it's a small world. And agents keep blacklists, meaning I will never work with that agent again. I literally have had offers from agents, and I'll be like, I don't care. I tell my sellers, this agent's so horrible to work with. They're shady. They ghost you. It's not going to close, even if they're the best offer ever. Right? People will make blacklists because how is important your co-broker relationship? Very important. If they like you, you know how I get offers accepted over other offers and I'm not even the highest? It's because the agent likes me. So understand that. You put your listing agent in a bad mood because you're horrible or you don't communicate well, and then suddenly negotiations go south. It's harder. They would have been open to doing all the pest repairs. Now they want 50% buyer, right? Because you pissed them off. Right? You'll see it if you go through a transaction and it's not well, your sellers over time or your buyers over time will get more and more pissed. They're going to less likely to compromise, less likely to move, right? And if you're doing poor communication, poor management with your clients, then that's going to happen. That's why it's important on co-broker relationship. I want to show that my buyers, my listing, my buyer side, I want to show them I'm a good agent. I'm professional. I know what to do. I know how to manage my clients. Because if you show them that, you're more likely to get an offer accepted because the seller's worried about, listing is worried about, do I have a good agent? Will they actually close the deal? Right? So what other ways you can know your client? Use a KidAU app. Remember, if you can keep them in your world, they have less people like Zillow emailing and saying, this is how inspection should look. You're like, no, that's not how inspection looks. You know, like you want to keep them within your app. You can create vendor and utility lists. You want to be able, we have spotlight vendors over there. You want to have vendors that you can count on, that you've worked in the past. When we do spotlight vendors here, we know them. Our agents have worked with them. We've vetted them. We know they're good. You want to have those relationships. You want to be able to offer those conveniently. Not only inspectors and all that, you want contractors, electricians, plumbers. Landscape is big. You want landscapers, right? So you need these kind of relationships, and if you want, you can ask agents. And plan a closing gift. Our top agents, when they're handing the keys and we're closed, is when they're most happy. Like, boom. They're doing videos, right? They're doing photos. They're handing them a gift.
You see the post of Jenny's red carpet.
Yeah, she does red carpet with standards, right? And you just walk through. Yeah.
I was like, I couldn't help but smile when I was looking at those pictures. I wish I was that client. I would be so
Right. Imagine,
thrilled.
and that's your customer service too. Right? What is the one thing the clients really did for you during this process? What did they do? They trusted. They trusted. That's the most important thing they can do. Trust it. And now you come across the finish line. You need to make it feel good. It's going to feel good anyways. But make it good.
Yeah.
Literally, we have knives we give to them, so they always remember because they tend to use them first the knife. But we also give a closing basket, and it's just for your stuff that you don't think about when you're moving, like toilet paper, Dawn, you know, like those things that are packed in the box and you forget about, right? You're like, oh crap, I need to go back, right? So we give them a basket of those, and they're fun. It's fun, right? Because it's like, oh yeah, I need these like little trail mix snacks, you know, so because they're just moving. Don't know, right? So just think about your closing gifts. There's plenty of vendors that provide that, but you want to, you know, that's part of your customer service. This is when you're asking for referrals too, right? Like, hey, this was a great deal. I really love working with you. You guys have been awesome. And I'm like, John, you've been awesome too. It's been awesome. It's like, You know, my business goes mostly by referral. That means I work with great people like you. And we have good trust and good customer service, and you trust me. And because of that, you'll refer me to clients. I literally do this. Most of my clients refer 2 to 3 people a year. Is that something I can count on? And they're like, John, we love you. Yeah. I'm like, fantastic. Right? In fact, is there anybody now that you know is buying this one? I'd love to talk. So it's not a closing gift, it's closing communication for referrals. Right? So, my business can come. Right? All right. You need to use your TC over there. You can go command in opportunities. In command, there's opportunities, and you could upload all those docs we talked about, the SILA disclosures and all those things, and they'll be uploaded. But if you want SB over there with enhanced transactions, they will just do it all for you for a small fee, mostly. And they will put it in the correct stages, and they will monitor that. So the good part is maybe you forget and don't and you said I have these planned communications, I have these planned things I want to do, and I won't remember them. One place you can put them is in opportunities. Each of those stages you can assign tasks to them. You literally can write a task. So when you drop someone into contract, it says, it reminds you, oh, you need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're like, oh yeah, 1, 2, 3. I gotta give it to the lender. I gotta get escrow information. You can just do it, right? And so you can build out your customer service, your communication timeline, things you need to do within command opportunities. Literally, there's active. Active. Well, it goes cultivate. That means they're a lead to cultivate. Now active in contract or searching for homes, and under contract close, right? So as you move through stages, you can, and within those stages, there's also different categories. So in my team, because we do a lot of transactions, and I have a team that does it in volume parts, I have that all built out. Literally, the stages are dictated. All my agents know on my team. When things move, these are the tasks. When things move, these are the tasks. Right? So everyone knows. You want to think about that within your thing. We just built the timeline, right? So literally on my team, we talked about what do we do when the contingencies are released? What do we do at the final walkthrough? When do we give the closing gift? How do we give it? Who's responsible for that? Right? In this case, it's you, but think about all those things. In your command app, command consumer applet, which is in there, you can make a buyer and seller guide, which is everything we talked about, you can make in there. And so, in fact, if you do a buyer consult, you can really send them the app, they open up and download the app and get it there. And you can say, look, we're going to talk about what it means to buy a home and the process of that. In fact, open up your app and look at the guide, and you can literally do your consult from the guide, which is on their phone, on your app. Make sense? Now, there is a default buyer and seller guide in there, but it's very generic because it's based on national. Obviously, California is unique. So some of the things we talked about on your guideline, on your timeline, right? What you talked about on your timeline, you probably want to put those steps into your guide. Make sense? Clear as mud? All right, that was a lot. I'm a little over. Any questions? Ahas. Man, that was awesome. John, I'm so confused.
That was awesome.
That was awesome. Anyone online? Everyone good? That's it?